Nadeem Bukhari notes. Linguistics. Error analysis. Para number 1. All learners of language, irrespective of L1 or L2, make mistakes. The mistakes, however, made by the L1 speaker are quite different from those of L2 speaker. The most important point in this discussion is the fact that while the L1 learner may recognize his own mistakes for what they are and be able to correct them, the L2 learner, on the other hand, does not always recognize his mistakes. Even when his attention is drawn to them, he often cannot correct them. It is generally assumed that a good pronunciation and fluency in the foreign language are a mark of a good knowledge of the language. People usually judge a foreign learner's knowledge of his L2 by the number of sort of mistakes that he makes. The first judgment is without foundation, the second has some truth in it. As a matter of fact, a good pronunciation does not necessarily go along with the ability to express oneself like the native speakers. And fluency varies both in foreign and native speakers with speech situation and the topic of conversation. Para number 2. The mistakes a native speaker makes are of several kinds. One of them is called syntactic blends, where he starts an utterance, breaks off and starts another one with a different structure. Then there is a class of mistakes which we call slips of the tongue or slips of the pen. We all know that the likelihood of our making mistakes of this kind increases when we are tired, nervous, or in some sort of situation of stress or uncertainty, or when our attention is divided. Non-native speakers then make mistakes of structure which constitute breaches of the code. These sort of mistakes produce unacceptable utterances. They are failures to match the language to the situation, e.g. the selection of the wrong terms in some technical discussion. Thus the breaches of the code are called errors. They are not physical failure but the sign of imperfect knowledge of the code. However, it has to be noted that native speakers are able to correct their own errors. Thus their errors cannot seriously be termed as the breaches of the code. The term error thus refers to those features of the foreign language learner's utterances which differ from those of any native speaker. Para number 3. The errors the L2 learner makes could be divided into two categories, expressive and receptive. The expressive errors relate to the phenomenon of writing and speaking, whereas receptive errors are concerned with listening and reading a foreign language text. And both type of errors show an inadequate knowledge of the foreign language. But it is much easier to detect imperfect knowledge in the case of expressive behavior. Expressions leave behind traces that are recordable in case of speech, permanent in case of writing. Receptive behavior most often has no observable behavioral traces. The hearer does not always demonstrate unambiguously that he has understood fully what we say. Much speech and most writing requires overt, clear response from the recipients. And we rely heavily in our studies of error on productive data. Furthermore, there is general belief that a learner's receptive abilities normally exceed his productive abilities. Para number 4. There are generally three stages in the making of errors by the learner: 1. Pre-systematic, 2. Systematic, 3. Post-systematic. In the pre-systematic stage, the learner gets things wrong most of the time, and only occasionally hits the right form, as if by chance. This is the stage of random guessing about all levels of the language. We could characterize this stage as one in which he is only vaguely aware of the fact that there is something to be learned, that the target language has a peculiar system. Thus, in the pre-systematic stage, the learner has not yet realized that there is a system and that system has a peculiar function. He can neither correct his error nor say what his problem is. In the systematic stage, he cannot correct his errors, but he can give some explanation of what he was aiming at or trying to do. In the post-systematic stage, he can both correct errors and explain what was wrong, that he had overlooked something, or simply forgot to apply a known rule. Para number 5. The description of errors can be made at various degrees of depth, generality, or abstraction. On the linguistic level, differences of this kind can be classified into 4 categories: omission of some required element, additions of some unnecessary or incorrect element, selection of an incorrect element, and misordering of elements. Syntactically, an error may be a wrong word order, semantically an order of words which syntactically, though appropriate but not meaningful, stylistically it may show an unacceptable choice of words, phrases, and idioms, and pragmatically the construction of a sentence which does not fit into the real-world context. Thus the range of error could be very broad indeed.